This is Lesson 14, Part 2, and we're going to be continuing our study of time signatures. In everyday life, we measure time in seconds, minutes, and hours, and in music, we measure duration or time in beats and subdivisions of beats. Remember that the beat is a recurring pulse in music, much like a second hand on a clock. It's predictable and it is independent of anything else going on around it. Beats are grouped together in recurring patterns. We will always emphasize the first beat of this group in Western music. We call that the downbeat. Well, the beat itself is actually not visible on a score, on a sheet of music. The rhythm is. So when we see note and rest values on the page, those are telling us what the rhythm of the piece is. Remember that while beat is independent of anything else going on around it, rhythm is dependent on a pulse to be fully realized. We're going to continue to use the Gordon syllables we've been using to represent the rhythm. So a one beat note will be do, a two beat note will be do, and instead of re-emphasizing the ooh this time, we're just going to hold it straight through 2 counts, just like we would if we were actually performing. 3 beat notes will be do, and again, we'll just hold that sound through for 3 full beats without re-emphasizing the syllable now. Half beat notes, we're going to group them in 2s since each one will be worth half a beat, so 2 together make 1 full beat, and we're going to use the syllables do, day. Do falls on the beat, and day is exactly halfway through the beat. We're going to continue putting the beat into our hands or our body, and we're going to continue to say the rhythm with our mouth. So always separating those 2 parts. Eventually, we'll either sing or play with our hands, whatever rhythms we see on the page, and then we'll have to internalize that pulse or keep that pulse in our toe, subtly, ideally. We're going to set the metronome at 90, and I'm going to group beats into 3s. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll be saying a rhythm. 1, ready, clap. And we're going to say 6 one beat notes. 1, ready, go. Do, 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 do. And do that again. 1, ready, go. Do, 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 do. For our next example, we're going to keep the metronome at 90, continue to group beats into 3s, but we're going to use our rests. So remember, for our rests, the pulse continues. We continue to clap, but our mouth will be silent during that time. We're going to do a 2 beat note, and then we're going to have a 1 beat rest. So together that adds up to 3. So 2 beat note, 1 beat rest, and we're going to do that twice. Okay, so here's our beat. 1, ready, clap. 1, ready, speak. Do, do. And do that again. 2 beat note, and then 1 beat rest. Do it twice. 1, ready, go. Do, do. I'm going to do that one more time. It's a little bit trickier. 1, ready, go. Do, do. One of my main objectives when I'm practicing or teaching my students to practice is just to have it become easier. So ease is why we practice, or a large degree of why we practice. So if any of this is tricky for you, please feel free to rewind the video and just try it several times. You really will find that with repetition, especially if you do it over the course of a few days, your body and mind just develop a familiarity with it, and then it becomes a little bit easier, and you'll feel this point where suddenly it's like you can feel you don't have to use as many brain cells to make it happen. For our last example, again, we're going to keep the metronome at 90. We're going to continue with our grouping of beats into 3s, but we're going to say 6 half beat notes. So since each one gets half a beat and we're doing 6, that's going to be 3 beats total, 1 full measure total, because measures are always going to contain 1 group of beats. So here we go. Always listen to the metronome first, then we get the beat started. 1, ready, clap. 6 half beat notes. 1, ready, say. Do day, do day, do day. 1, ready, go. Do day, do day, do day. 1, ready, go. Do day, do day, do day. We learned about time signatures, and they're going to be at the left side of the staff, but to the right of the clef sign. So first you have the clef sign, and then potentially something else, which we'll talk about, and then a time signature. Remember that that contains very important decoding information, the decoding information we've been waiting for. The top number will tell us how many beats there are in each measure, or how the composer chose to organize his piece in terms of grouping beats. Each measure will contain one group of beats. So if a 3 is at the top, there will be 3 beats in every measure. We can know that and expect it, and that'll actually really make reading it much easier over time. The bottom number will tell us which note is the pulse or beat note. So the time signature is the notation tool that the composer uses to tell us how many beats there are in each measure and which note value is going to be the designated beat or pulse note.
Continuing with Unit 2, which is our rhythm unit, Lesson 6 on time signatures. First, we're just going to read this time signature together. So you would read this as 2-4 time, or you could say our time signature is 2-4. It says circle the note which gets 1 beat in each of the following examples. So it would be the beat or pulse note. Okay, so the top number tells us how many beats per measure. So this says 2 beats per measure. We can know that, and we'll be able to use that information to help us actually decode the music more quickly. We know that the bottom number tells us what kind of note gets a beat, and we'll think of that 4 as the denominator of a fraction, which will help us recognize that in this case, a quarter note equals 1 beat, and so this would be the right answer. This is our quarter note, a filled-in note head with a stem. This time signature would be read as 4/8 time, or the time signature is 4/8, we could say. And for this one, this means we have 4 beats in each measure, so the beats will be grouped into 4s. The first of every one of those 4 beats will be emphasized, be the downbeat. And then this tells us, it's a denominator of a fraction, we can think of it as. It tells us that an 8th note is going to be our beat note or pulse note. So this will be the note. A filled-in note head, stem, and a flag. That'll get 1 beat. And now we have 3/2 time, or the time signature is 3/2. 3 beats per measure. And this 2, again, think of it as the denominator of a fraction, tells us that a half note equals 1 beat. So we're looking for an open note head with a stem. As we continue to move forward, you're going to see that I'm always going to be sketching out this note and rest value pyramid because it's such a critical part of learning to decode with ease. I'd highly recommend just learning to draw it out for yourself. So it says the last note is missing in each measure. Write 1 note, 1 single note value in each box to complete each measure. Put the note on any line or in any space. Remember, the time signature will tell you how many beats are in each measure and what note gets a beat. Okay, so first of all, we have to just decode this. Now, in time, you will just do this all automatically in your head. But for now, it's very much going to need to be something we think through. So there will be 3 beats in each measure. So that's step 1. Now we need to know what kind of note's going to get a beat. And if we think again, denominator of a fraction, this is going to tell us that a quarter note equals 1 beat. Okay, now before I do anything else, I'm going to go back over here to my tree, and I'm going to note that this is going to be 1, which means this is 2, the whole note is 4, and the 8th notes get half a beat. Okay, so now I know we have a half plus a half a beat, right? So this is a total of 1. Okay, I need 3 though, right? So that's 1. Now I have 2, because this is also worth 1 beat, right? So there's beat 1, beat 2 is now accounted for. So what's missing is 1 full beat. And they said we can only write 1 note value. So it's got to be a quarter note, right? We need exactly 1 more to make 3. So for beat 3, I'm just going to write 1 more quarter note. I'm going to do it in space 2, put a stem going up on the right side. Okay, 1 done. So 2-2 time, I should say, sorry, this one 3-4 time, right? What we just read was 3-4 time. Now we're in 2-2 time. Okay, so 2 beats per measure, and we know, bottom number of a denominator, that a half note equals 1 beat. That's our pulse note, right? Okay, so again, let's go back here, and we're just going to change this now because it's going to be different. So now we're going to say that our half note equals 1, which means that our whole note is twice as much, so it's only worth 2 beats. And that means our quarter notes are actually worth the half beat. And our eighth notes are only worth a quarter of a beat each. Okay, so we have 1 half note. Well, that's actually 1 beat already. Okay, that's accounting for beat 1 of the measure. We only need 1 more. And they said we're only supposed to write 1 note value, so we need 1, right? Again, it's going to be a half note, so we'll just write another half note. Okay, moving on. 6-8 time is our next example, and it says to write 1 rest in each box to complete each measure. Okay, remember that every note value has a rest value equivalent, so that shouldn't be too different than what we just did. So the top number tells us that there's 6 beats in each measure. The bottom number tells us that an eighth note, right, bottom number of the denominator, equals 1 beat. Okay, so again, before we do anything else, go back up to our pyramid again and change these numbers because it's changed again. Okay, so this is now worth 1, which means just going to be twice as much for a quarter note, so 2 beats, twice as much for a half note, 4 beats, and then twice as much for a whole note, so 8 beats. Okay, so we see beamed together eighth notes here, right? They're still eighth notes, they just have their flags connected to each other. So we have 1 plus 1 plus 1, so that accounts for beat 1, beat 2, beat 3. We need something here. And then we have another plus 1 plus 1. Okay, so this accounts for actually all of beat 5 and all of beat 6. So we're missing 1 eighth note beat, right? And we have to write a rest value. So instead of an eighth note, we're going to look over here and we're going to write an eighth rest. So remember, we just draw a little dot in space 3 and then kind of a swoopy 7. Okay. Next example. So 4-4 time, we have 4 beats per measure. I'm going to have a hard time fitting that in. And this tells us, bottom number of a denominator, that a quarter note equals 1 beat. And again, we're going to go up here, change our pyramid values again, because even though these are fixed relative values, the actual duration of each note is not fixed. It's all dependent on the time signature. So this is 1 beat, half note is 2, whole note is 4, eighth note is half a beat again. Okay, so for this one, we have a half note. So a half note is actually going to be 2 beats, right? So this is going to be 1, 2. It's going to account for both of those because it's 2 beats. Okay, we're missing something. We don't have a beat 3 right now. And then we have 1 over here. Okay, so together, 2 plus 1, we know we already have a total of 3 beats in this measure, so we're missing just 1 beat. 1 single beat that's supposed to be represented with a rest. So just like the quarter note will get 1 beat, we know that there's a rest equivalent. It will also get 1, so we're going to do that Z, right? The swoopy Z there as a quarter rest.